Okay, let's wait another 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll start. Actually, while we're waiting, does anyone have any questions on any topic whatsoever? That includes peace in the Middle East. I'm happy to, because I have Google right here. I just type it right in and I'll give you the answer right away.
So, Morty, what's the future of the United States?
Future that, that's easy. That's an easy one. I'm waiting for the hard ones.
Okay,
So,
well, give us the answer to the easy one.
yeah, the easy one. In the short run, it's not so good. In the long run, it's going to be great.
All right. It's a good answer.
We're going to be great again.
All right.
I heard
Goal accomplished.
I heard something on the radio today, which is where I get all my facts, that they were talking about the American Revolution, 1776, a big deal. We became free of or the King of England, et cetera, et cetera. And so someone was conversing with a Chinese diplomat, and they asked him, what do you think about, the American Revolution? It was a big deal. 1776, we became free. Thought about it, he said, too soon to tell. Too soon to tell. So you got to have
Long-term thinkers.
the long view. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Okay. So on that note, yeah, any questions? I'm going to do a recap of last week. But if there's any questions on anything, and I'll ask that question again in a few minutes. Jump right in. Okay. So last week, recap, we talked about two thoughts. Thought number one is that the only thing we can control in our lives is our state of mind. Everything else is an illusion, especially those of us that are married or those of us that have kids. We know that already. Um, and the second thought was that I presented was that the only thing that can make us free, liberated, I don't like to use the word happiness, is also in our state of mind. We gave the example of two people in an elevator. Elevator got stuck, two completely different experiences. Then we did a short 3-minute meditation where we counted our breath. And then we started to create two lists of our requirements. Requirements were what we learned. List number one was what we learned as a child growing up that was expected of us. What we learned from our parents, our family, our friends, our culture, TV, what have you. Things like don't be rude, be quiet, don't stand out. Or it could be just the opposite. You should be more, you should be more outspoken. Uh, you're too quiet. Everyone's different, right? And and then the second list was things that we learned more as an adult that we took on ourselves, and could be similar things that are on the list. Be fair, be respectful. Maybe it's on the child's list, children requirements list. Maybe it's not. And those long lists are how we view ourselves. The word self is underlined. And when things on our list are not met by ourselves or others, it causes an upset. So my favorite example is always be on time. My family was always be on time. They didn't necessarily have to say it, but you knew it because we always got everywhere a half hour to an hour early. So always be on time, which means that if I took that very, very seriously and I became attached to that and I was clinging to that requirement, or always be respectful, don't be rude, whatever it was. And when someone, myself included, violates that, it causes an upset, negative emotions. In fact, if I'm waiting for someone and they're late, I can feel like, oh, I can't believe they're late. And we get upset about that. We get irritated and annoyed. Or someone's rude or disrespectful or not fair or taking advantage of someone else. Well, and to some of us, those are really, really important rules that we live by. And to some of us, some of those rules are not that important. the more attached we are to those rules, the greater the upset. And okay, so, and then we had a meditation tool when feeling an upset, any kind of annoyance, irritation, anger, we can go to our breath, come to the present moment, go to our breath. There's many different ways. One is just long, slow breathing, observe it. The other way is take an inhale, hold the breath, and then exhale. Do that 3, 4, 5 times. You can do it 20 times. The idea being that we are breaking the habit of being susceptible to all of these rules and requirements that are on our list and getting upset when someone or ourselves breaks the rules. That includes politicians whose names I will not speak, but their initials start with a D. Although honestly, there are people that get upset when some other party has a president in office and oh, so and so did that again. Oh my God. And they, as Lama Lanang would say, and we lose our minds. So did anyone have an opportunity to observe this past week when you were upset, when you were annoyed, to see what requirement was being violated? Now, just to let you know what I know and some of you don't know is we get somewhere from between slightly upset to very upset or annoyed or irritated probably 50 to 100 times a day where something doesn't go the way we hoped or expected or thought they would go. That's just life. And each time that happens, there is a very, very slight to very, very big physical reaction, stress, tense. But we live in an environment now where it happens so much that we don't even notice it until maybe someone goes to your shoulders and they go, ah, wow, boy, is that tight up there. Not everyone is that way. Not everyone is tight up there or wherever we feel our stress. So that's the question is, does anyone want to share anything that happened this week where something didn't go exactly the way you wanted and you got annoyed, you got irritated? It could be, oh, I was in the car, I was driving. Could be anything. Could be one of my favorite examples, which I'll give you in a few moments. You stubbed your toe, right? What happens when you stub your toe? Two things happen. One is there's pain. And the second thing that happens is we get angry. So we must be violating something on our list because that's the rule. The rule is when you get annoyed, irritated, upset, tense, stressed, whatever the word, whatever negative emotion you want to call it, the reason we do it is because we didn't expect or want that. And it's on our list. Any takers?
So one of my rules as an adult is to be orderly. So I noticed a lot this week. My my noticing, sometimes upset, but sometimes just noticing when I broke my rule or if somebody else broke my rule. And Hugh and I actually had an agreement with each other that we would point out to each other when we noticed that a rule had been broken and we could ask each other, what rule just got broken? So that was pretty interesting too.
Phenomenal, phenomenal example, especially for those of us that are married, which is if that's my rule and someone comes up, people used to make fun of me at another company that I had because they would come over to my desk and they would move something a half an inch and then they would make a bet on whether or not I would come back from lunch and I would notice it. And of course, those of us that are married, have children, we know what that can feel like as well. When either something that we have has been disordered or they are disorderly. So what's really amazing about this game is that the more you look at your requirement that's being violated, And then if you feel, then you can do your breathing. So you look at your list and go, oh, that was such and such. Oh yeah, there was that one. A few things happen. One is eventually you start to smile. Instead of getting upset, you go, ah,
Mm.
yeah, that's the one there. Okay, got it. And then eventually it's not even on your list anymore. You just look at it and go, okay, there it is, just like anything else. You just become curious about it. So let's say you work for someone who's your boss and they are rude. Well, eventually, what will happen as you practice this is it doesn't impact you anymore.
Mhm.
And you can just deal with the situation. So the game here is not, oh, okay, I'm not angry anymore. And just like, I'm not going to deal with it. That's not what I'm saying. We deal with it, but we don't have to deal with it with the anger, the annoyance, and the irritation. We can deal with it with openness, with curiosity, with a clear mind, which is nice, a nice place to live instead of being angry uh, a lot of the or being upset a lot of the day. Good. That's a great example. So if I said to you, do you have, and I teach other in other venues, and sometimes I'll say, "How was your week?" And some people will say, "Oh, my week was great." I say, "Okay, great," but you probably didn't learn anything. Or as Lama Lanang would say, everyone's a good when the sun is shining and the food is good. Everyone's a good Buddhist practitioner. So I'm happy that if someone has a great week, but you didn't learn anything. So when something doesn't go our way, that's when we can say, great, what an opportunity I have to learn and to break a habit. Because when we break all these habits, that's when every time you break a habit, get a little bit more liberated, a little bit more liberated, a little bit less in the negative world. And what's the fun part is when you start to break one habit, you know what happens to the others? They all get weaker.
Mhm.
Isn't that crazy?
Mhm.
So little by little, the list gets shorter and shorter. It has less and less power. Um, did anyone do any of their meditation? And if so, how did that go? Go ahead, Sam, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it went fine. I've been doing meditations sort of daily for quite a while,
Oh,
and
great.
um, the I I experienced one of the things that we talked about last week. It was middle of the day tiredness, trying to stay awake. Uh, but that I like you, I usually meditate in the morning, and
Hmm.
that's the best time.
Hmm. Yeah, good. It's good to notice these things. It's good to experiment as well, which is, oh, what's it like to meditate two in the morning? What's it like to meditate when I'm tired? What's it like to meditate and just to kind of see what happens. You know, as I mentioned, I'd say when I meditate, I usually meditate in the morning. Sometimes I'll add one later in the day, and I'm almost guaranteed 50% of the time to fall asleep. Okay, well, that means if I do 20 minutes and I meditate for 17 minutes and fall asleep for 3 minutes, okay, I get the benefits. Not a problem. Uh, and as I said, a lot of people meditate 10, 20, 30 years, but if they are not able to apply something during the day, a tool during the day, then their practice is quite limited. So that's why I bring out that structure early in this class, because that's probably the most important thing that I can offer, in addition, of course, to the content of Buddhism, which we're going to get in more and more today as well. And my recommendation is when we do that practice of during the day, something goes wrong, something's not as we expected. The only way you know that is when you start feeling a little annoyed, irritated, very annoyed, irritated, is work on the small things first. They can fade away quite quickly. The large things take longer. A lot could take years until you get adept at handling the small ones. If someone, God forbid, has a divorce or a big breakup, not going to go away in 2 minutes and seven breaths later. I'm good. Well, maybe if you're a man, I'm good. But for most of us, it takes a lot of effort. So, and the hardest thing to achieve, the reduction in stress are the ones that we're most attached to. How do we know which ones those are? Those are the ones that have incredible impact on us when we get really annoyed. Someone owes you money, they haven't paid, things like that. So this is a very selfish practice, right? So far, I'm just talking about how we can improve our lives. That's great. Okay, good. How does this impact others in the world? Or is this purely a selfish practice? What do you think? Does this impact anyone else? Or is it just for me? Or just for you?
For sure, it impacts everybody we come in contact with.
How?
Well, we we are emotional beings and emotions are contagious. And if we're disrupted, disruption is in the air.
Hmm. Absolutely. So when you're calm, your partner or whoever you interact with is more likely to be calm. The same way if you're upset about something, you're annoyed, it comes across, same thing there as well. So this method spreads peace really to the family, to your friends, anyone you interact with. And your usual verbal or mental response keeps the negative perpetuating. And when you don't feed the flame with oxygen, it fades and gets out. So when you do stub your toe and you do feel some pain and you get angry, what requirement is there in that situation that's being violated by you? If someone wants to speak, just take yourself off mute. Unless there's people here that when they stub their toe, they don't get angry. I guess that's always possibility.
For
Well,
for
go ahead, anyone.
for me, it would be to be more careful. I fell a week ago, and it was like didn't have to do that. Um,
And you got annoyed. You got annoyed at yourself.
well, yeah, I got annoyed that I'm getting older, and sometimes I stumble.
Right. So maybe it was the requirement of always be careful. You should be careful. Or maybe it's like, oh, I'm in shape, be in shape, or something. I mean, be fit. Everyone's different.
Mhm.
But it's something to look at. Once again, what happens when we start to feel that upset? So just as a recap, actually, we've already done the recap. Okay, so we have two types of thoughts. We have the conceptual, imaginative types of thoughts. Oh, I have to solve this problem. I'm at work. Working on a spreadsheet, things like that. And then the second type is called self-centered thoughts. That's what we're talking about now. And these are the ones that we're looking at. And we have hundreds of these a day. Sometimes they're so slight, these self-centered thoughts, that you don't notice it. And when you do, it triggers an emotion. So we've all developed these systems, these processes as we grow up on how to handle it. It's like a defense mechanism. And the first thing we do is we tense up and we get angry, jealous, or irritated. That's how we deal with it. So when we have these systems or these requirements we put in place that are habitual, that manage these self-centered thoughts that arise. So each emotion is a combination of two things. One is your thought, and the second is your body sensation. And when we can start working with those, that's how they fade. Now, I have a quote here by someone famous, Carl Jung. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And that's kind of goes along with what I said earlier, which is, hey, you're having a bad day. Well, that's wonderful because that's just a great opportunity for us to learn something about ourselves and start to liberate ourselves just by literally just by looking at it, identifying it, and then go to your breath. We're breaking the habit. Very important. Okay, moving on. Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths. Anyone remember what they are? Anyone remember any of that? Feel free to go to your book if not. And I'm going to bring it up right over here. I made it even shorter than it was in the book. It's coming up in a minute. So, the first noble truth it'll come up on your screen in a few moments. Takes a while. Is we suffer. Very simple. We suffer. We'll talk about what that word suffering means in a moment. The second noble truth is, and suffered, uh, might as well talk about it now. I remember when I first learned the Four Noble Truths, whatever, 35, 40 years ago, I said, suffer. I'm not suffering. I may not be a happy guy, but I'm not suffering. So suffer, the word suffer is not the best definition or translation when they translated this from either the Sanskrit or the Pali. The second noble truth is there's a cause. There's a cause for that suffering, craving, attachment, desire. We'll talk about that. Third one is we can stop it. The fourth one is this concept called the Noble Eightfold Path. So when the Buddha first became enlightened and he got up from his meditation, these were the first, this is his first teachings. And he taught them to five of his colleagues that his colleagues saw him eating food, enjoying himself. And at first they didn't want to have anything to do with him because they thought he had violated precepts or commitments. But then they saw this, call it a halo or aura about him. And that's when he started to teach. So, when I was growing up, sometimes things went my way, sometimes they didn't go my way, but I didn't really feel I was suffering. To me, suffering is associated with people right now at war. Those people are suffering, or starvation, or in Sudan, or what have you. So, since that translation, a lot of, I think, more open-minded people in the West started to realize that suffering is not the best word. So now people use disappointment, dissatisfaction. So anytime we feel disappointment, dissatisfaction, that's a form of suffering. And the origin of the word suffering is quite interesting. I'll bring it up here. Dukkha is the word that we use, and it's made up of two words, du and ka. Du refers to just means the word bad, difficult, or negative, and ka refers to the axle hole, literally, which is in this. Oh yeah, it's right here in the middle of this picture, axle hole, which means when you have a bad axle hole and you're on a chariot, you're on a carriage somewhere, what kind of ride are you going to have? Very bumpy ride. So that's the origin of the word dukkha. Now, do you want to translate into suffering? I probably would not do that. I'd probably translate it into discomfort, disappointment, that kind of thing. Something unpleasant for sure. But of course, the suffering, there could be a range of suffering. So even pleasant experiences are considered a form of dukkha. Why do you think that is? I would think pleasant is pleasant. Why would a pleasant experience be viewed as a form of suffering? Anyone want to jump in here? What do you think? Or maybe the Buddha made a mistake. That's a possibility too, right? He could have made a mistake on that one.
I would think because it's going to end.
Exactly. Because eventually everything's temporary. We'll talk more about that. And eventually it will end. And what do you feel when something good goes away? That could be a person, that could be a party, that could be the food's over, the good food's over. Now we have bad food. Uh, so yeah, whenever, even pleasant experiences are considered a form of dukkha. They're temporary and they will inevitably end. So when the Buddha first gave this first sermon, the Four Noble Truths, he began by identifying the reality of suffering. Birth, painful. That's why babies cry. Aging, we know, most of us know what that's like. Sickness and death. So the word suffering is a useful word, but it's not accurate. Um, and he taught that we can be free from our cravings, and that's kind of what we're trying to do now with these lists that we've created. But he did not teach that we can omit all difficulty in our lives. He never said that. So, a form of suffering is pain, physical pain. And there's the two arrow story. Some of you may know it, which is Guy gets shot by an arrow, you know, and then he says, "Who shot me? Why did you shoot me? What kind of arrow did you use? What did I do wrong? This is not fair." That all those questions, that's the kind of suffering that we can eliminate. That's called stabbing yourself with the second arrow. The first arrow is inevitable, physical pain. The second arrow is absolutely not inevitable. So, first arrow, it's unavoidable. Getting sick, aging, someone says something, your knee hurts, things like that. The Buddha says everyone gets hit by this arrow. Even an enlightened person feels physical or initial pain. The second arrow, this is everything the mind adds on top. Why me? Anger, blaming, shaming, replaying it 50 times over and over again. That's the suffering about suffering, and that is optional. So that's suffering. There's a cause. We can stop it. And then the Buddha gives us a roadmap with the Eightfold Path. So my favorite part of the chapter is that the Buddha doesn't want you to take his word for it. He always says, hey, there's lots of stories where he says, hey, test it for yourself. You decide for yourself. Act selfishly over and over and over again. See how you feel. Be kind to others over and over again. See how you feel. Take a week. Meditate daily or for a few weeks and see how you feel. Hey, if it's not, you don't notice any difference, waste of time, don't do it. So I really very much appreciate that. Okay, Eightfold Path. So this is his solution. We're not going to go through them all, but basically, it's in the book. And this is not something that's done in a linear fashion. It's something that can be done, simultaneously in different stages. But there's a lot going on here, as you can imagine. And the first one, right view, is really just having this understanding of the Four Noble Truths and impermanence. And we'll talk more about impermanence later this evening. Right intention, be kind, right speech, obvious, right action, actions that cause harm to other people, right livelihood. He gets into the details here. If you're in the business of slaughtering people or creating arms and selling arms and munitions, bad karma. Right effort means be aware in your mind. Right mindfulness, being aware of what your body senses, feelings, and thoughts, etc. And right concentration, developing your mind through meditation. Okay, so now we're going to take 5 minutes to do our meditation. Same thing we did last week. I'll go through the instructions. But before we do, any thoughts, comments, or questions on the requirements, on meditation, on the Eight Noble Truths, on anything we talked about so far? Anyone, anyone, anyone? It's all so clear. It's great. I love it. Everyone's getting an A plus. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to increase our meditation time 67% over last week. It's never been done before. We're going to go from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. I hope you can manage it. Okay? And I'm going to go through directions twice. So right now you could just listen. You want to close your eyes, that's fine, but I will repeat the directions in another minute or two when we will be meditating. So the directions are very simple. We're going to observe our breath in their most natural state. We're not going to modify or change them in any way, shape, or form. Some of the breaths are going to be long, some are short, some are deep, some are shallow. Sometimes we have a long pause in between breaths, sometimes there's a short pause, all different types of breathing. And we're just going to observe them. We're not going to modify it or any way. And then when we notice an inhale and then an exhale, we're going to count the number one in our mind. And then when you do an inhale and exhale, the next one, you're going to count the number two. Inhale, exhale. Number 3, when you get up to 10, you go back down to 1. Very simple. If along the way you fall asleep, you lose track of what count you're in, you notice that you're thinking, that's not a problem at all. That's just part of the game. Just go back to 1. If you get distracted, just go back to 1. So I'll repeat a lot of that right now. So for now, see if you could just sit up nice and tall on your chair, tall and relaxed. And if you want, you can close your eyes and then notice the air just passing through your nostrils. As you inhale, the air touches the front of your nose. Same thing on the exhale. And then you'll notice after the exhale, there's a pause. That's when you can assign the number 1. And on the next inhale and exhale, number 2. No rush. Follow your natural breathing. When you get to 10, just go back to 1. If you get distracted or lost, that's not a problem at all. Just go to 1 and start again. And I'll watch the clock. Let's just enjoy the next 5 minutes. Okay, very slowly. Open your eyes, come back into the room. So, anyone, how'd that go? A lot of thoughts, very few thoughts. Anyone become enlightened? Just raise your hand if you became enlightened. Thank you. Okay, good. I usually have one or two become enlightened, so thank you for. You're going to teach next week, by the way. Okay. Anyone want to share how it went? Went well. It didn't go well. It's only 5 minutes. I saw pink elephants flying all over the screen. I mean, I've heard it all. So no one, anyone? Go ahead. Go ahead, Joanne.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it seemed like more like 2 minutes than 5 minutes.
Hmm. Good. I think. Sure. Good. Pretty much anything you say, I'm going to say good. Because it doesn't really matter. As long as you do it, you get the benefits. Even if you said, well, it didn't go so good for 4.5 minutes. I was thinking, bah, 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 bah. Doesn't make a difference as long as you do it. Now, if you want more benefit, what can you do? You can extend the time, or you could do it twice in a day. So, when I go to the gym, they have the pink weights, the pink weights, the 2 pounders. I go to the gym, I lift up the 2 pounders like this, boom, put them down, and I go take a shower. I'm done. There's probably some benefit to that, but it's not going to be a lot. But there will be some, even if I don't do it quite right. But if I want more benefit, I could do more weights, or I could stay in the gym longer, or I can come back the next day. So, so once again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. Class is free. Um, but we don't judge how we did. We don't compare. We just do it. And I call it a game because we need to have a light feeling, not heavy, like, oh, damn it, there, I'm thinking again. Damn it. I suck at this. That doesn't work. It actually, in fact, does harm. So I call it a game, the game of meditation. And as long as you do it, you get the benefits. And we all know what the benefits are. The calmer, less stress, blah, blah, blah. But just as, or even more importantly, the muscles that we're building during that meditation, we get to use those the other 23 and a half hours of the day, including while we're sleeping, which you're not going to get into. So if you don't go to the gym to work out and you got to go bring the shopping bags from the car to the kitchen, might be a problem, especially if they're heavy. But when you do work out physically, you stay fit, then yeah, you can do a lot more with your body. Same thing here. When you meditate, you become much more sensitive to your thoughts so that you know when, oh, I just got annoyed. I'm going to make up a number because I don't need to deal with the facts. 99.5% of the people on this earth don't have a clue when they're annoyed or irritated or angry. That's it. We've just accepted it. So that doesn't lead to freedom or liberation anytime soon. So that's the first step is, oh, now I can be aware. And then this next step is, what am I going to do about it? Oh, that's a habit. I'm going to break that habit. Do that enough, boom, liberation. Okay. Emptiness, impermanence. It's a huge, huge topic in Buddhism. Emptiness and impermanence, huge topic. You usually don't hear about it. You certainly don't hear about it in, you go to Zen practices. They don't really talk about it. Of course, it's part of every Buddhist lineage, every Buddhist school, but you just rarely hear it talk about it because it's easily and commonly misunderstood. But not tonight. So I'm trying to share something which will come up in a moment. So impermanence and emptiness are very much related to each other, but they're not quite the same. So impermanence is very simple. Nothing lasts forever. That's it. That's impermanence. Now you're all experts on impermanence. You can go now teach Buddhism on impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Everything changes moment to moment. This reminds us not to hold on so tight to anything or it will lead to great suffering. So, for example, when I look at my house or I look at a building, it doesn't feel like those things are impermanent, but we know in the long run, that building's not going to be there and probably not going to be there in 50, 75, 100 years. Even the greatest buildings in the world, the World Trade Center, 9/11. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, big lesson there in impermanence. So it's good to remind ourselves of that. Why? Because if we hold on to things as permanent, we don't see or feel this, then we get very disappointed when things go away. And that creates an upset. And that can even be with people. If you take someone for granted and then they're not there anymore because they've moved or they've died, the pain is far, far greater. Nothing wrong with sadness, but when we view things, people, places, and things as fixed, that's an illusion that we buy into, and that's going to cause a lot of suffering later. So the Buddha said the objective world arises from the mind itself. That's about emptiness. So we're going to talk a little bit about emptiness now. Emptiness goes even further. Emptiness says nothing or no thing has any inherent independent essence. What does that mean? It means that everything exists only as a result of something causing it. Nothing's independent. You know, is my body independent? No. I relied on my parents to have sex. I have to feed myself food. I have to do all kinds of things to keep this body going. It's not independent. My car, that's my car. Well, it won't be your car in 10, 20, 30 years. Not only that, but that car, the reason that car got there that way, oh, someone had to build it. Someone had to create the metal. Billions of things had to happen. So when we understand that nothing or no thing has any inherent independent essence, what does that do? We can relax a little bit. When you start to deeply see that all things are impermanent and dependently originated, you begin to realize that nothing is fixed, they're empty. So the Buddha says the objective world arises from the mind itself. What does that mean? Well, some people interpret that as if I don't see the tree falling or hear the tree falling in the forest, that it doesn't happen. Now we know it happens because we see the evidence of it. But so that's one interpretation is the objective world arises from the mind itself. Well, that means that if I don't experience it, that it doesn't happen. That's one early interpretation of one of the schools of Buddhism hundreds of thousands of years ago. The more common interpretation is we all experience things differently. So you and I can look at the same tree, but by the time we're different, by the time we are finished perceiving it, experiencing it, I'm going to view it slightly differently than you view it. So every sensory cognitive experience depends on our mind's interpretation. So when you see a tree, what appears to you is not the thing in itself, but it's a mental image and a concept shaped by our senses, our memories, our expectations. When I was a kid, I fell off a tree. I had a terrible experience with trees. Now I look at a tree, I have a little bit of that feeling hit me. Or, oh my God, I grew up in a forest and the trees are beautiful. And I thought so I have a completely, so there's so many ways that we accept or that we interpret these experiences, and it's all dependent upon the mind. It's all wonderful and good intellectually, but how do you live your life with this misunderstanding? And where's the practicality to it? As I mentioned in the first class, I love practicality. If it's not practical, I'm not interested. I mean, kind of. It's an extreme statement, but kind of. So we use meditation or daily reminders to realize that the world we cling to feels like it's solid and external, but by realizing that it arises and is interpreted within our mind helps reduce attachment and fear because nothing is solid. So when you see thoughts, emotions, perceptions as a creation of the mind, like those two people in the elevator, one was totally angry, pissed off, and annoyed. The other one was calm as can be. They interpreted that experience very differently. We realize that appearances are transient, not absolute realities. So
It
that,
sounds,
go ahead.
Marty, it sounds to me like the Buddha was into quantum physics.
Yeah,
Really, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you know, things that we're looking at, that they're particles, and
Agreed. And actually, I didn't put it up on the screen. I probably should have now that you mentioned it. But there's a bunch of physicists in the last 50 to 100 years that basically repeated the Buddha's words using scientific, they probably never studied the Buddha, but using their scientific experiences. And in fact, when you look at some of the interpretations by great Buddhists from 1500 years ago, 1200 years ago, they talk about atoms.
right?
They use different words.
Wow.
So anyways, that's good. That's good to so it's good to understand this and look around and have that and train our minds. If these things are impermanent, this was caused by that. A game I like to play if you have kids or grandchildren is when you're sitting at the dinner table or the breakfast table, whatever, you say, hey, that apple you're eating, where'd that come from? Oh, mommy bought it at the store. Oh, okay, great. Where did it come from before the store? Oh, um, came from an apple tree. Where was the apple tree? Oh, it's near the store. Is it right behind the store? No, 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 it's from the road. How does it get there? Oh, the truck's got to bring it. Who drives it? And then you go back and back. You can go back and back and back and back. Where did the tree come from? The apple tree. Well, there's a seed. Where did the seed come from? So this is showing us impermanence and things are empty of inherent nature. Thoughts, comments, questions, and anything. Okay, so one of my favorite Zen teachers is a woman I mentioned her last time, Joko Beck, Joko. Beck, Beck. I highly recommend her books. She died, I think, in the 1990s. She lived right here in San Diego, for those of you that are San Diegans. Um, and let's read something to you that she wrote. Qualities and attributes exist in pairs, stingy and generous, dull and interesting, stupid and clever, irritating and agreeable. One depends upon the other for its meaning. When we think or speak harshly of someone, we implicitly assign ourselves the positive opposite. For example, if I tell myself, give me 1 second, yeah. For example, if I tell my friends that such and such person is positively dull, I am implying that I am at least moderately interesting. I wouldn't seriously condemn someone as a loser if I didn't think I was at least on my way to being a winner. So in thinking or speaking harshly of others, we reinforce our own illusions. We create a false identity for ourselves, which we must then safeguard and protect in our small human story. Those are the requirements that I'm not reading now. Those are the requirements that we've set up for ourselves of who we think we are, our self is, which we then safeguard and protect. It's very important my stuff remain orderly until it's not. Happiness is our natural state of being when the edifice of illusion is removed or stripped away. The way to happiness is not to try to create it. Rather, it is to seek everything that obstructs it. There is no need to try to become happy. It's sufficient just to remove what blocks or obstructs our inborn happiness. I use the word freedom. Thus, happiness is excavated, it is brought out of ourselves like the cleaning of a dusty mirror or the shining of a brilliant gemstone. Okay, so the homework for this week, guess what? It's the same homework as for last week, which is meditate every day, you get an A. Meditate twice a day, you get an A plus. It doesn't matter if you do 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Don't matter. Doesn't matter. Please start to identify the little ways that we get annoyed, irritated, something goes wrong, not quite the way we'd like it, and feel that. And then check your list of requirements and see if it's not on your list, then add it to your list. And then you can do some 1 minute, 10 seconds of breathing. Doesn't matter. We're breaking the habit of these negative emotions, of these habits that we've developed over 10, 20, 50, 60, 70 years. And then you use your meditation tool during the day at any moment's upset, brings you back into the present moment, takes you out of that world of negative emotions. And then we can read chapters 7 and 8. Is that what we're up to? Anyone through us? Yes, 7 and 8. And then we'll talk about it then.
Well,
Any comments or questions?
Morty, could you send that quote that you just read via email or something?
I certainly can. I will do that. I don't have everyone's email addresses here, but I know Cynthia does, so we can send that out.
Yeah. Yes, Cynthia has mine, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Good.
I thought it was terrific, just terrific.
Yeah.
Well,
I shouldn't have told you Joko wrote it. I should have said I wrote it.
I
Next
don't
time.
think anybody would have believed that, but
Next time.
next time.
Next time. I'm not giving any more credit. No, for sure. Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, I just want to go back to something you said earlier. You said the only thing we can control is our state of mind.
Great.
And I was listening to Gary Zukav today. He was talking about Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And he was in a concentration camp and it was snowing. These people were in bare feet. They were being stabbed with the soldiers' guns and thrown to the ground. And he was saying to himself, he said, they took my family, they took my home, they took my money, all of the things, but he says, they can't take my mind. So because I just heard that today, it really resonated with me when you said the only thing we can control is our state of mind. And he wouldn't let them take that away from him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Buddhist writers quote Viktor Frankl. I don't think he was a Buddhist. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. I think he was Jewish. But anyways, another example of that is, a lot of Tibetans were imprisoned, especially monks and lamas were imprisoned by the Chinese in 1959, 60s, and even today. And when people leave or escape Tibet, I don't know if they still do it now, but they get a chance to meet with the Dalai Lama. He gives them a white kata, Kata, and welcomes them, to India. And there was one time he saw a great Lama that he hadn't seen in a long time, 10, 15, 20 years. He knew he was in prison. He knew he was tortured. And he said, yeah, how are you doing? How are you doing? He goes, how'd it go? He goes, well, I was very fearful. He goes, what were you fearful about? Even though he knew. He goes, well, I was fearful that when my torturers were torturing me, that I would lose my compassion for them. So incredible mind to be able to do that in these extreme situations, but same thing, the only thing, and it's not easy. Those are extreme cases. I don't want to compare ourselves to them. I'd rather just start with the little things first and deal, hopefully, God forbid, we never have to deal with torture. But that's where those people are at, Viktor Frankl and these great minds. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Joanne. Good. Any other thoughts, comments, questions on anything? Okay, so we have our homework, and do you have any comments or questions? Some people have already done this during the week. Just feel free to email that email and I'll respond. Okay, Good to see everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Marty.